Chapter 7, Facebook, Meta. Meta, the parent company that owns Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp, among other things, engages in the same type of behavior that I described previously in this presentation regarding Google Alphabet. Meta tracks and traces nearly everything you do via its apps that spy on each user. On every election day, no matter the year or the contest, there are still undecided voters right up until the final hours of the race. Meta, with its colossal database of knowledge on each user's preferences and behavior, can quite accurately identify undecided and ambivalent voters. Meta has sent partisan go vote reminders to such users to motivate them to get off the couch and cast their ballot. In 2012, Facebook published an article in the journal Nature describing how it sent go vote reminders to 60 million Facebook users on Election Day in the 2010 midterm elections. Facebook calculated that this voting reminder motivated 340,000 people to vote on that particular election day. You might recall, in 2018, it emerged that British political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica paid Facebook for user data from tens of millions of profiles in 2014, which it used to tailor political campaigns for Ted Cruz and later Donald Trump during the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign. To be clear, I am nonpartisan. I am not endorsing or criticizing any politician or political affiliation. My concern here is that you might be turning to institutions or corporations or platforms for information, assuming that you can take their content at face value because these organizations have your best interests in mind. But you might orient yourself differently towards these organizations when you understand that they spy on you, sell your personal data and private information to other entities without your consent or knowledge, and then that information is used to filter the online content you interact with, and therefore affects what you think and how you behave. I think it is important for you to practice skepticism and neutrality and maintain an arm's length distance toward all of these information factories in order to give yourself a better perspective on current events and topics of the day. I think it is important for you to know that Meta, between 2018 and 2023, in just this 5-year period, hired more than 160 individuals from the U.S. intelligence community. Facebook's Trust and Safety Division is run by, quote, former CIA agents. Sounds just like Google's Trust and Safety team, doesn't it? In a July 2023 broadcast, investigative reporter Glenn Greenwald explained that top positions at technology firms are now held by people coming directly from intelligence agencies. For example, James Baker, who was involved in most censorship decisions at Twitter prior to Elon Musk's takeover of the platform, worked as general counsel for the FBI before he became deputy counsel for Twitter. I'm quoting Greenwald now. So the FBI sent its top lawyer to go work in the part of Twitter that censored political content. Do you understand? That's the FBI controlling our domestic political discourse and the limits of it. End quote. And as of December 2022, Google employed at least 165 people in high-ranking positions from the intelligence community. Sounds like Meta, doesn't it? Remember earlier in this presentation when I mentioned that many of the so-called experts or pundits that TV news employs used to work for the intelligence community? Greenwald tweeted in August 2023 that, quote, The only major American center of power that employs more ex-U.S. security state operatives than corporate media is big tech. Greenwald concluded in his July 11, 2023 episode of System Update, quote, "This is why they're so obsessed with destroying the few outposts of independent media, the few places they cannot control, because without those, they really do have a fully closed information system. And a fully closed information system is the hallmark of totalitarianism. If you can control how people think and prevent them from hearing dissent, you can control all of their actions because their actions are based in what their thoughts are. And if you can control their thoughts, you don't even need to control their actions, and that is the system that is being created." Amaryllis Fox, a former CIA agent, explained to Dr. Robert Epstein in an October 21, 2024 interview that the agency has always used news manipulation as a first line of action. How involved is the U.S. intelligence community with technology companies? You are sitting down, aren't you? Dr. Nafiz Ahmed, investigative journalist, reports that, quote, "The United States intelligence community funded, nurtured, and incubated Google as part of a drive to dominate the world through control of information. Seed-funded by the National Security Agency and CIA, Google was merely the first among a plethora of private sector startups co-opted by U.S. intelligence to retain information superiority. The origins of this ingenious strategy trace back to a secret Pentagon-sponsored group that for the last 2 decades has functioned as a bridge between the U.S. government and elites across the business, industry, finance, corporate, and media sectors. The group has allowed some of the most powerful special interests in corporate America to systematically circumvent democratic accountability and the rule of law to influence government policies as well as public opinion in the U.S. and around the world. Back in the 1990s, many of us had high expectations of the internet, believing that it would democratize the sharing of information and would create all kinds of cooperation and innovation and progress across the globe. While the internet was often mythologized in its early days as having been created to champion human freedom, we have since learned that the internet and many of its most popular companies were birthed directly out of the national security apparatus of the United States. While ordinary people assumed that social media platforms were invented and freely given to users for the purposes of self-expression and for connecting and sharing with our network, it appears that this might have been a deception, and that the more plausible reason for deploying such technology was to accumulate user data for multiple purposes, including to train artificial intelligence. Many entities cooperate, knowingly or not, with the agenda of the intelligence community to control information, such as Wikipedia, Snopes, non-governmental organizations that are propped up by government money and are front groups for intelligence agencies, and fact-check organizations that are funded by corporations. All these entities obstruct the pursuit of truth in the service of undisclosed interests. Are you gaining more of an appreciation at this point for just how challenging it is to pursue truth in our time? It's quite daunting. Imagine being oblivious to the types of manipulation and information control that I have documented so far in this presentation. The more time such an oblivious person spends online, on technology platforms, or consuming even established traditional media through television, radio, newspaper, any source that can be co-opted by corporate interests or permanent Washington, the more such a person is exposed to the type of persuasion Edward Bernays taught us about so long ago. The perception of reality in the mind of such a person will be very different from the viewpoint of the individual who practices skepticism, pursues independent sources of information, and looks for evidence to justify claims instead of automatically believing them.